Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks to those of you who have been supporting the channel and following the content. Like I promised, we will be doing a woman in corporate conversation segment. We did get it started with our previous guest, Gabby Ndwandwe. I hope you enjoyed that. From the engagement, it does seem like you enjoyed it. If you haven't checked it out, we were speaking about dynamics of being in the workplace, imposter syndrome. We touched on Gabby's career journey and her leadership journey, and we spoke about mental health. So I think it is an important conversation. You would have seen the rise in people saying they've got anxiety or whatever issues and not feeling like it's okay to speak out about that in a workspace. So in line with that conversation, we have a special guest today. We've got Mechell Chetty. This is actually someone that I didn't have a connection with before. I just thought, let me shoot my shot, and I reached out to her, and I'm very glad to have you on board.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm so looking forward to the conversation, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, thank you. So we're going to chat to Mechell about her career journey, her background, any gems she has to share for young individuals like yourselves, myself, and any advice. She is an HR professional, so I feel like it's right up her alley, and that is why I reached out to her. As you will see, she's got lots of amazing gems that she will be sharing with us. So let's get into the conversation. So, Mechell, tell us about your background and your leadership journey leading to this point.
So Pelesa, I am South African and I was born in Johannesburg. So I live in Durban now, but I grew up and I studied in Johannesburg. I'm the eldest daughter in my family and the eldest grandchild. So growing up...
Deputy parent. I can relate.
Yes, absolutely. So growing up, I grew up with a big family environment. I remember Sunday lunches being the biggest thing for us. Always went to my grandmother's home, and everyone would bring food and we'd sit around a big table and spend the afternoon together. As kids, I really had an awesome childhood that way. But you know, from where I grew up, I don't think it was a common expectation of me to even go into tertiary education. So I didn't know anyone personally who had gone to university. But I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted to go to university and further my studies. And I had a very, very supportive father who I think he made me dream big. And with very limited means, he did whatever he could to support me, and so I became the first person in my family to actually go to university. Wow. And to study. And I always to this day say, you know, my father actually supported that ambition, and you know, as a mother of two boys, I had to know that I loved being a mother. I've loved raising my boys, but that my career was also important to me, because that was an investment. That was something that I wanted for myself, and that was what my family supported as well for me. So that's a little bit about my background. I have two boys. They are now actually, Yashvir is in his third year of university, and Rohan is in matric this year.
Wow.
I'm currently working with Unilever, a lovely company. And I've learned so much from the organization about leadership. So yeah, very rich career with the organization. I've had a leadership journey that has taught me that I don't know it all, and that every step of the way I am developing and I'm growing, and I'm learning, and I learn from everyone around me in every moment. So that's the best way to describe my journey. I'm still on it.
Yeah, you're still learning, you're still growing. It's very interesting to hear that from someone who is quite senior in the organization, that they consider themselves to be still developing. And I think it's encouraging for those of us, I don't know where you are in your journey, but myself, I consider myself to still be starting and still quite junior in my career. To know that it is a journey. I will continue to progress and to develop. So what else can you tell us specifically about what you do? I think it's important to highlight that.
Yeah. So I, after going to university, where I studied a Bachelor of Arts, and then I did my postgraduate in business management, I majored in human resources. So I took up my whole career in that field, in human resources, and I must say I don't regret it. It's a fantastic field and one that I feel like I can give back. I have a very big job title, which is one of the things. It's one of the things I talk about even all the time, is to say, you know, Vice President, Human Resources for Unilever Africa. And a job title is just that. It's a job title. It does not define who you are. It is not all of who you are. It is something that you have earned, but it's not all of who you are. So I always try to recreate how I would describe myself, and I describe myself as a people escalator. Because I feel that being in human resources, my journey is to actually empower, build confidence, and grow leaders. And I specifically talk about building African leaders for Africa. Because I think our continent needs strong leaders, people who give back to our continent and its richness and its people, to just make our lives better. So I think for me, when I think about my job that way, I think everything that I do feels different to just following a task or executing a task. So that's a little bit about what I do every day.
Wow, guys, an entire VP of HR. Very excited to have her on board. It's funny that you speak about putting African leaders like on the map. We recently hosted within our function a conversation with James Todd, who is quite a huge advocate for that. What would you say is the importance of specifically grooming African talent for Africa, and why are you passionate about that?
You know, I've always said that Africa is an amazing continent. It is a very rich continent, you know. We have got so many resources, we've got so much of talent, we've got so much of amazing potential for the continent that hasn't been tapped into yet. And I believe that if we develop leaders for the future, and we have leaders who want to give back to our society, we can genuinely overcome some of the burdens that our people experience. And I think, you know, when you think about the world not being fair to everyone, you know, not everyone has access to very basic human rights, you know, the right to education, the right to hygiene, the right to water, the right to sanitation. These are very basic rights. And I think, you know, building leadership shouldn't be about just climbing a ladder or hitting your accolades. It should be about actually what are you giving back to your community. And so I'm particularly very big on servant leadership. I think one of the qualities of being a leader is to say, how do you serve those around you, and how do you unblock barriers around you? Because I think if we have had the privilege of getting to certain milestones in our careers, we actually have to say, how are we paying that forward? How are we developing others? How are we supporting others around us and grooming others around us? So that's why I think it's important for us who live on this continent, who were born on the continent, to give back to the continent and to its people. That's not to say that we don't welcome guests from other parts of the world. And you talk about James Todd. He was an awesome advocate for developing people on our continent, and without having the richness of his global experience, I don't think we would have had some of our leaders thrive under him. So I absolutely welcome people coming onto our continent and supporting our journey on that as well.
So guys, one of the things that we spoke about last time was the imposter syndrome, and linked to that, I did a bit of reading around what it means to have a seat at the table. The concept is from the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Of course, at the level that she was at the time she wrote the book, she was also senior in the organization that she worked in. But I believe that it's not unique to specifically being like sitting at a board members meeting or with directors or that sort of thing. At each of the leadership levels that we're at, there is something to be overcome mentally in order to sit at the table and own the space that you're given. So I do want to chat a bit about what it means to have a seat at the table, what are some of the barriers maybe that women in particular might face when they're there, and what others can do to make that space conducive for them. I am specifically posing the question to her because she's part of, you heard her speak about being a people escalator. So that's part of like what she does. So I am keen to hear your thoughts around that.
I mean, one of the things that I always start with is to ask myself, what am I telling myself? So what is the conversation that I'm having with myself first?
Yeah.
Why do I not believe that I have a seat at that particular table? Why am I feeling nervous about going and having my conversation there or giving a contribution there? And I'll give you an example. I feel really strong about my skill sets in human resources. I feel like I've had 23 years in the field. I can talk about talent development. I can talk about organization design. Pelesa, as a finance professional, you'd be able to talk about balance sheets and so forth so much. You'd be so au fait with that. But I was invited to become a board member of the company. And I was like, really me? Because I would now be the first human resources person who is actually asked to be an official board member, board of directors member. And I remember thinking, wow, would I be able to do this? What does this entail? And having this really nervousness in my stomach and pit of my stomach, what if I failed at this, right? And I had to dig deep and say, but you would not have been invited if somebody didn't see the possibility in you, right? You would not have been invited. So what's there within you that you know you can get out of your space and out of your realm of human resources and contribute to? And, you know, I realized what that was. It was the fact that when I was at the table and I was listening in on conversations around trading terms in our sales environment, I would tune into what are some of the challenges that the team were experiencing. And I may not be able to answer it because I've not done a sales role, but I was able to, with my human resources skills, ask some questions because I could see that the conversation needed to get deeper. So I would ask some deeper questions to keep the conversation hanging until we heard everybody's point of view. And in doing that, there was a richness in the conversation itself, and solutioning came to the fore. So it's not that I could solve the trading terms conversation on my own, but I had a skill that asked questions and got people
to
talking
contribute
more
meaningfully to the
and
conversation.
contribute meaningfully. And so I knew that I had a seat at the table and I was contributing. So the first thing that I would say is, what are you telling yourself? Right? And of course, when you're entering a space where it's new to you and you don't know everything about the space you're entering, you don't know everyone in that space, the second thing is to ask yourself, who am I surrounding myself with? You know, and there's a common misperception around saying, you know, networking is just, you know, rubbing shoulders and trying to win your case or play the game and all of that. But that's not what I mean. I mean authentically saying, who are the individuals who've been there before, they've walked the road that I can learn from? Who are the individuals who see something in me that they would be willing to invest in? Who are the individuals who will focus on my strengths and not my weaknesses? And who are the people who will pull me up and pull me in? Those who will pull me up and say, come, I'm going to give you this opportunity, or pull me into the conversation and say, let's hear what Pelesa has to say into this. And for me, that's really important, to surround yourself with people who have that energy. You know, there will always be people who will judge you. And I think one of the biggest things that we have that limit us is fear of being judged, not fear of failure. Not fear of failure. Because
so
if
more around the perception.
We sit with ourselves, we know it's possible, we know we can visualize that we can do it, but we fear the judgment. And I would say if you surround yourself with enough people who believe in you, that fear diminishes. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. Trust me, I still fear judgment, right? But it diminishes because I decide to focus on who's around me, what is my goal, what do I want to achieve within that goal, and have my support mechanism. So that's my second thing, is who are you surrounding yourself with? And the third thing I want to say, Pelesa, is, do you daydream? Do you daydream enough?
Do you look forward to something?
Yes. And people go, daydream,
what
do you mean daydream? I daydream. I sit and I imagine my world that I would so aspire to, you know, something that I really want to go after, and I daydream about it. I visualize, what does the room feel like? Who's in that room? What's going on? And, you know, and people call it, in leadership books, they call it visualization. They say the art of visualization. The reality is, ever since you were 3 years old, you practiced visualization. You daydreamed about the future, about, you know, you saw an advert and you said, I would like that doll's house, or I would like this, and I would like that car, and I would like that. You daydreamed and you imagined your future. And I think it's so important to imagine yourself in a situation. So imagine yourself at the seat of the table. Imagine what you would want your contribution to be. And then you'd have to be brave enough to go after it and practice it and make that happen, right? So I think that's the other thing that I would say is really important as you're building your space and your energy. And the third thing is, you're going to be learning. You know, the first conversation you have might not be the greatest. You might do more listening, more tuning in. You might take your first step to say something, but then not be sure if you should be saying it. The next time you come, you give a better contribution. And that's okay. Until you find that people are listening to you. They're valuing your contribution. And then that will build your confidence and your momentum. The reality is that we will not get it right every single time. Yes. But it's to step into the space, to practice, and to keep working at it. Put in the hours and keep working at it. Be curious. Ask questions. If you don't have the answer, at least ask a question. Because in asking a question, you will learn.
Linked to what you said about fear of judgment and actually making that contribution. In my previous role, when I first started, I used to be so scared to like speak up in meetings. And I had done the role before as an assistant. It's not that I was unfamiliar with what people were speaking about, but there is that fear of judgment to say, what is the perception going to be around like what I'm contributing, and will it be well received? Is it going to contribute meaningfully to the discussion? But I eventually just had to get over it, so to speak, and just trust in my abilities and the contribution that I'm making, and trusting in that there is a reason why I am there in that forum. And like Mechell said, I've got a contribution, unique contribution to make, linked to my skill set.
That's so important. What you've just said is so important, because I think we go into meetings, or we go into an environment, and then we think, oh my God, there are so many smarter people than me, or there are people who are so much more senior than me, or there are people who have had so many more years of experience, and we start creating all these barriers now, right? And by the time we even start a conversation, we've created all these barriers. But the reality is, you've prepared most for that presentation. It's your spot, and you're going to be presenting. You know more about the work that you've done, so the chances are you'll be able to answer everyone's questions. So I always say, you know more than you think you know about the field that you are in. And you'll be surprised then, when you're in a relaxed environment, how much of this information starts free flowing. Have you ever had that, and you realize, actually, I really know my stuff.
I'm good at this.
I'm good at this. I know my stuff, right? So just believe it. Believe it. You got to tell yourself, I know my stuff. I've prepared for this. I'm going to be okay.
What would you say, in light of the fact that I do acknowledge that there is an internal work to be done, but equally, maybe in certain situations, for some people, the environment is actually not conducive. It's not always I'm scared to speak up. Sometimes it's I feel like maybe I'm not being heard, or I'm not being given the space to make a contribution. So what would you say with regards to the responsibility that others who were at the table before have, especially, I don't like to say this, but especially with women, acknowledging that other women do face the same kind of fear. And
I think that's such an important point, and that's why I say, who are you surrounding yourself with? And try and pick individuals who have been there, who have had an experience, and don't always feel like, because you know, I need to find another woman to be there so that she will only understand. I mean, I will tell you that for the longest time, I only had men to look up to, you know. And some of my greatest mentors and supporters have been men, right? So I just asked for help. I just said, you know, I'm gonna, like, one of the things, you know, I'm gonna be making this big presentation. I've prepared for it, but if you don't mind, I'd like to sit down for 30 minutes, show you what I have, just so that you could see if I'm on the mark. Or could you, you know, I know that there's a lot of senior stakeholders there. Can you tell me a little bit more about what they would be looking for? So if you find someone who's already at the seat of the table, ask for a mentoring relationship with that person and say, look, what questions are likely to come up that I should prepare for or preempt? You know, and because there's certain stakeholders who have a vested interest in a certain area, for example. And so I find mentoring extremely relevant in that context. You know, it's saying, what can I anticipate? What should I look out for? What advice would you give me? You know, what am I missing in this situation? And I think you ask, what is the role of people who already have a seat at the table? I think they have a fundamental role to pay it forward. I think they have a role to support. I think when they are giving feedback, it should be supportive feedback. You know, it should be constructive and it should build, not destroy. So I think that's really something that, you know, when I sit at the table and we have lots and lots of young talent coming and presenting stuff to us, you know, it's never about saying you did a bad job. It's about saying, right, okay, this part was great. For the next presentation, let's focus on these areas. Let's take a conversation online. Let's see how we can work on that area. And I think if you do that, you build real confidence. The worst you could do with someone is to destroy confidence, right? Because then you won't get the best out of that person anyway. So I do think leaders need to build confidence, they need to give support, and they need to give coaching and mentoring.
I do also believe in the power of mentorship. As you will continue to see, a lot of the people that I engage with are people who've played a mentorship role. I feel like they've even helped me, linked to what Mechell is saying, like to build my confidence, or to rather step into it. I believe it was always there, but to step into it and act accordingly. So what would you say, as a person who's like growing and like still developing in their career, what do they need to look out for in a mentor-mentee type of relationship? And how do they approach someone, or what is the, what do I want to say? What is the, you know, sometimes you want to approach someone like, okay, they're a woman, I feel like they will hear me, but it's not necessarily the most effective mentor-mentee relationship. So what are the things to look out for to have a meaningful relationship?
The first thing I would say about a mentor is don't feel like it's this formalized thing that you have to do, and you have to have one session every single month, and you have to make sure you come with a plan. You know, I think a mentor-mentee relationship has to be very organic, and it has to be something that works for you, the person being mentored, right? So it has to it's something that is for you, right? And so therefore, choose people who at the time can offer value to you. And I would say choose 5 people. So you say, oh my God, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. The reality is, if I gave you a pen and a piece of paper right now, and you should probably try this, you can sit down and you can say, who are the people, if I'm having a bad day, who do I phone? You know, who are the people, if I want advice on my fitness, that I go to? Who's that person that if I've just had an argument with my my spouse or my partner or my son, who do I talk to? The reality is, in every family there's one person you'll find you go to. In a work environment there's one peer, that one confidant you'll go to. You all have a best friend. You all have someone that you look up to and you say, I really would like to be more like this person. And someone that you say, wow, this is a young person that is up and coming. So I always look at a 360 view. You know, there's always that family member, and that for me is my mom's sister. That if I'm having a rough day, I just want to talk about, she's my go-to. And then I have young people that I say, oh my gosh, this digital world really scares me. Like, tell me a little bit more. Like, school me. Like, you know, what's the yeses and the nos on Instagram? What's the do's and don'ts on, you know? And so the reality is we're always learning from different sources. You already have those people in your life. Yeah. Now, what you probably need to sit and do is to work out, what are your goals?
Yeah.
What are you wanting to achieve? And then say, right, okay, from my goals, whether they're personal goals, whether they work goals, whether they lifestyle goals, what is it that I want? And who from the list of people that I've noted can I go to?
Yeah.
And is there someone missing from that list? Because sometimes we go to where we are comfortable also, right?
But they're not necessarily going to help you.
They're not going to help with your goal, right?
Yeah.
So if your goal aligns to the people that you've got in your life and that you're getting your comfort from there and everything, great. But if your goal is stretching and you're going into a whole new space, we talked about walking into a new space.
Yeah.
You might want to find someone you've never talked to, and you say, you know, I actually need to learn a little bit more about this area. Who in this space does that?
Yeah.
My experience is that people are flattered to help. They want to help. If you walk up and say, I've noticed you do this really well, or I've noticed you've had such great success in this area, I'd love to learn more. Can I just take a couple of hours, you know, a month from you, just for you to help me solution this or whatever? I've found it in most times, whether it's a man or woman, whatever, people are like so happy to help.
Yeah.
That's another barrier we hold. We think, oh, what if they say no? What
Like,
if they won't be able to help?
Why do you need the help?
Why do you need the help? Exactly. I don't think people think like that. I think people are willing to help. Every single time people have asked me for a mentoring relationship, I've said yes.
Yeah.
It may not be that we've talked 5 times or 6 times. We've sometimes only talked twice.
Yeah.
Because there's a particular situation,
and it doesn't necessarily require frequent engagement.
It's a particular situation that person wants to talk through. It's a particular conversation they want to have. And the other insight is 9 out of 10 times the individual has the answer. They just need someone that they see some credibility in to just affirm them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Don't stick to one person. In fact, that's my mentor. Therefore, they must have the answers for everything that I'm experiencing.
They serve different roles.
They serve different roles.
Wow, that's so interesting. You spoke a little bit about young people. So I just want to hijack the conversation a little bit and say, ask, do you have any advice for people who are still very junior in their career, maybe even in university? There are people on this platform still in university who are about to step into their careers. What are the skills that maybe they need to look out for, and how do they distinguish themselves as they get into the workplace and grow in their careers?
Oh, wow. So, Paresa, my passion is youth. It's where I put all my energy, because I genuinely believe, and it sounds like a cliche, that youth are our future. Why are they our future? Because they are our future activists, they are our future leaders, they are our future consumers if you're in a company. They are our future developers in terms of ideation and so forth. And so, you know, whether it comes to our workplace and watching how we are reinventing ourselves as an organization, or how organizations need to unlearn so many things that they've done, you find that youth have experienced more in that area, right? Youth are more digitized. They are more agile and nimble. They're more willing to take risks, so they're more entrepreneurial, right? And having 2 youngsters at the moment, 21 and 17, I can tell you, I look to them and I look at how they learn and how they do things, and how fiercely independent you are already. You know, so one of the things I always say is you have so much already going for you. So at the same time that youth have so much going for them, I do believe that there's so many limitations that the youth are facing, so many difficulties that the economy has brought upon us, right? So youth, despite all the effort that they're putting into getting their degrees and their tertiary education, their hustles going, their entrepreneurial projects going, at the same time, the economy is showing us that youth unemployment is sitting at 65%.
Yeah.
So I think there's some real challenges and difficulties that the youth face. And I think what I would advise, number one, I would advise that as many organizations as possible should invest in the youth and in skills. But what can youth do for themselves? I think focus on building your brand. And what do I mean by that? What is authentically you?
Yeah.
You know, what is going to define you? Your attitude to the circumstances that you are facing. And remain curious, remain optimistic, and build your network.
Yeah.
Build the people around you who are going to try and help you, you know, get to your goals and your future. So that's what I would say to our youth. Don't give up. You have so much going for you, and I believe that if you stick to your plan, you will get somewhere, and there will be many more supporters if they can imagine your vision with you.
Yeah, thanks, that is beautiful. So I do want to touch on the role that maybe organizations play. I don't know how to frame this, but there is a conversation around inclusivity in the workplace. In the past year, it has been predominantly focused on like race and diversity in that sense, and making sure that everyone is included. But what would you say you envision, or even if you try to create within your team or the people that you work with, as steps to work towards that inclusivity for women in particular?
You know, in the area of diversity and inclusion, there's always two parts to it. One is the representation, and that's really important, that we are representative and diverse as possible. And then there's the inclusion piece, which is a very simple thing of how do I feel?
Yeah.
How comfortable do I feel in the space? And it is not good enough for any one person to feel less comfortable in a space that we call our workspace or our team or so forth. So I think for me, giving comfort to every member of your team and looking out and asking, is everyone here comfortable? And the second thing, has everyone got access to the same opportunities, to the same ability to thrive, right? So that's the second thing that I would say about diversity and inclusion. And I think it's not only a leader's job to create an inclusive environment. It's definitely a leader's job, but I think it's also a team player's job, because who do we work with?
Engage with everyone else in the team.
You're a team player. And sometimes it's the simplest thing of saying, how are you today? You know,
acknowledging that
the person is there, greeting the person and saying, you know, what are you working on? Taking interest in what the person is working on. Asking a simple question, how might I help? You know, just simple human conversations can go such a long way in making someone feel valued, feel included. And I think we need to practice that all of the time. The other thing that I would say is individuals who are feeling like, okay, there are too many people who look alike, but I look different or I feel different. You know, the important thing is to step in and say, what do you have to offer? What do you want to be known for in that team? How do you want to show up? For a long time, I used to travel. We used to go to Turkey. We used to go to Dubai. I was part of what was called the supply chain leadership team for Africa, Middle East, and Turkey. I was on that leadership. There were only 2 females, Palesa. Sure. It was a lady from Turkey and myself. And there were about 17 men, you know. And we used to have our meetings, and then we used to have dinner together. And I could decide that the dinner was optional and like just say, make an excuse and go to my hotel room. But I decided no, I would have dinner with everyone because I had a seat at the table. I was a member of the supply chain leadership team. I would have a conversation. And if I felt that the conversation was going too much into an area of a sport that I didn't know anything about or whatever, I didn't necessarily take more interest in the sport because it wasn't a sport I was interested in. But I created a new form of commonality. I talked about topics that I knew we all could talk about, you know. And so create that space, because then I wanted to be invited in. And I think eventually what I found is people realize not everyone's interested in a particular sport or whatever. So what is your common ground? How can you create those conversations or bring in something new and interesting that others want to learn about? But all I would say is, in the space of diversity and inclusion, it's an everyday effort. It's something that we must all work on. We must all be advocates for each other, and we must all create opportunities for each other. I think that's the best way I can say that we will grow and develop, and make sure that this world is safe, and we all take care of each other. You mentioned well-being. And I think you cannot divorce diversity and inclusion from well-being. You know, people have so much of stress, so much of anxiety, so many variables going on in their financial lives, in their family lives, and so forth. And so when they come into the work environment, they cannot separate from that.
They bring all of who they are.
They bring all of
that.
And if you're going to be judging someone on the basis of how they ran that one meeting, you know, just rewind and ask yourself what might be going on in that person's world, you know, that is causing that. And I think if we have a bit more compassion and kindness and appreciation for each other, that also shows inclusion. So
thank you. I feel like that's a nice way to round up the conversation around having a seat at the table. There is a role that others play to bring you in, but equally you also need to just put yourself out there and step into it, of course, if the environment is conducive. Thank you, Mechell. I'm very excited to have had her on board. It's been great learning from you, and yeah, I look forward to more conversations offline as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pelissa.
Thank you. So guys, if you did enjoy the video, make sure you comment down below and let us know what resonated with you and if you're enjoying the segment. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.